Welcome back to Quick and Effective Environment Illustration. We've blocked in all our layers, we've refined all our layer shapes, and now we're ready to really begin the next step, to move on to the second phase of the work. Now we can start rendering. We can start thinking about texture and color. And so here we're going to start in the background on one of the smallest, most distant objects to set the level that we're going to bring things to. So I'm zoomed in all the way 100%, but I'm making judgments off of the smaller window, the thumbnail version of this image. Because I can be this zoomed in, and I could go in with a hairline brush and draw out cracks and draw out all the detail and all the planes and all the divisions of this mountain range. But if I was to zoom out, I would see that that's way too much detail for something that's far in the background. This is way in the atmosphere on the other side of the water, behind these mountains. And so to get that look, I've got to be careful about how much rendering and how many brushstrokes I put in. I want to use mostly texture brushes and get the effect of plane changes and craggles and peaks and valleys in this mountain range. Get the effect of that, the effect of how that looks at such a distance. At, this could be 2 miles back there. Well, actually, that's probably about 5 to 10 miles. That might be much further. But of course, a mountain at that distance, if you're able to see mountains outside, go look at them from the distance of 10 miles, the distance of 50 miles, and then stand up right next to them. You can't even tell it's a mountain anymore. It just becomes the environment. And at each distance, you've got to treat the object differently. And in general, as these objects come closer to the viewer, closer to you, there's more contrast, there's more color contrast, there's more temperature contrast, there's more value contrast. And as things are much farther away, such as this mountain, you squint down, there's not much going on in terms of value change here. But just those subtle indications of texture, of a little darker on this side, a little lighter on that side, it sets up and it gives you just enough so that when you're viewing this image at size, this reads as a distant mountain range. And it's really hard to keep that stuff in mind when you're painting landscapes, because we're so used to treating the object that we're painting more, I guess, in terms of a form study, as it's easy to go on this far distant background and paint the details of a mountain range. But we need to remember that we're not painting a mountain range, we're painting it at a distance. We're painting the impression of it, we're painting the effect of it. And that's why we use texture brushes, use less contrast. Here I'm blocking off some shapes, and within those shapes you can get a little texture. And see, if you see, that's really the same technique we're using for every element. We're blocking out a shape, either it's the entire background mountain range and working within that locked shape, or we're lassoing out a shape and painting within that with a large texture brush. And so it's a larger version and a smaller version of the same technique. And you can keep getting more and more refined and detailed, making ever smaller and smaller selections as you then use that selection as your mask to paint within more detail. Now that I've added a little bit of interest and detail to the shadow side, got to clean up the light side as well. And this is that clipping mask layer above the background. And so even though we've moved on to the coloring texture stage, we still got to refine these layer masks. You'll be refining the layer shapes right up to the very end. As you add more texture and color into the shape, it starts to change the image, and you'll find that you'll need to make adjustments to the silhouettes and the outlines that you've had down. You won't be making drastic changes, but just ever and ever more detail. Just as you zoom in, then you can refine and get every little crack, every little change in value and change in the form. But see, we haven't done any of this detail stuff until now. And it's making laying these details in so much easier because the shapes are there. The shapes are it's almost as if I'm just filling in where the light would fall, hitting this shape where this light side is already there, and I just got to carve it out so that it works with the large mass that's already been laid down. Now we can add a little more. Add a little more texture. Some plane changes in this mountain range. And see how subtle these value changes are. It's different color, different value, but squint down and you can see how subtle these changes are. Save your big value changes for the foreground, at least the middle ground. So this far in the background, you know, we don't go that dark, and we don't go as that light. It stays in this desaturated, real middle value range. See, I'm using this texture brush to just try to do as few brush strokes as possible, to use a large texture brush to indicate the large textured side of a mountain. And see, we zoom out, and everything works better at the distance you're viewing the image at. You know, that's what we're creating it for, to be viewed at a distance, not zoomed in at 100%. So that's going to wrap up this first lesson in coloring and texturing. I'm going to apply this same process all around the picture. In the next lesson, we'll move forward, take a step forward, and start coloring and texturing the middle ground in lesson 11.